I actually believe in 10 to 20 years, it's going to be you and I that are going to own the drone, and our drones are going to go fetch our things for us. So they'll go get the pizza, they'll go get the bread and milk, and those type of things. Just don't see Amazon having to deploy 1 million drones in the future to deliver us stuff when, we're all going to own drones that'll go get our stuff for us.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 102. Periodically, I do a segment where I talk to someone who covers the drone industry to get their perspective on stories or trends that they've been following. On this show, we travel to the Great Plains, to the town of Mandan, North Dakota, to talk with Marlo Anderson. Marlo, also known as the Guru of Geek, is the host of The Tech Ranch, a weekly radio program featuring technology for everyday use. He is also co-founder of Zoovio Incorporated, Awesome 2 Products, and National Day Calandar.com. Marlo is actively involved in promoting unmanned and robotics technology in North Dakota. In this episode of Stories of the Drone, he talks about the Tech Ranch radio show, how drones are viewed in the Great Plains, the expansion of 1 million cups into North Dakota and its impact on the drone industry, the efforts to create an autonomous friendly corridor, and his latest venture, the National Day Calendar. We'll also talk a little about Drone Focus 2017, which kicks off on May 31st, which coincidentally is marked as National Autonomous Vehicle Day. But before we hear from Marlo, I want to thank those of you who have chosen to support the Drone Radio Show. For as little as $1 per month, you can help offset the costs of production and keep the podcast growing. To join the team, go to patreon.com/Drone Radio Show. And now let's talk drones with Marlo Anderson. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Marlo to introduce himself.
Marlo Anderson, founder of National Day Calendar and host of the Tech Ranch.
Let's start with the Tech Ranch. What is that?
So the Tech Ranch is a weekly radio show on Town Square Media. We talk a lot about technology for everyday use, really not narrowing in on anything in particular. If I think it's something that most of the general public will use either now or in the future, we'll talk about it.
How long have you been doing this, Marlo?
Wow, about 5.5 years now.
Have you covered anything about drones?
Oh yeah, I cover drones quite often. A lot of people, when I talk to them about drones, are always concerned about the security aspect of it. From people who are not really in the industry, you'll find they hear these stories about people flying their drones around so they can look in other people's windows and spying on other people. So that concerns people a little bit. I also run into the occasional person who talks about if they're dangerous to be around, will the props injure me and those type of things. So, we try to dispel that a little bit. We talk about the certification processes that have gone on, of course, the registration of your drone, and those topics that, like around Christmas time, of course, I think there was about 1 million new drones that were introduced to people this year at Christmas time. So, we want to make sure that we inform people that, yes, you have to hop on the website and register those if they're over a certain weight and that type of thing.
Can you tell us about one of the more interesting events or stories that you've covered?
Yeah, so I attend the drone rodeo. I'm not sure if you've ever been to the drone rodeo in Nevada. It's usually right before CES, and that's always a fun thing to go to. So I've had the opportunity to interview quite a few people there. Had the opportunity to visit with the founder of the Aerial Sports League, and that has been fascinating, actually, watching the growth of that. Two things I find fascinating about it. First of all, that there's actual serious money now in some of these purses for these events. So a person can make, in fact, I think Dubai, didn't they just recently have $1 million purse, which is amazing to me. But secondly, what I really find amazing is how they've come from being devices that, just a couple of years ago probably flew at 40 or 50 miles an hour, and now they're pushing 80, 90 miles an hour with those same craft just because they're changing the props a little bit. And I even find it interesting that you see 3D printers showing up at these events now so they can craft whatever they're working on to adjust to the elements and things like that. So I think it's just fascinating.
Going back to the drone rodeo, I've never heard of that before. Is it really a rodeo with drones?
What it is you certainly don't have rodeos coming out of a chute and somebody coming behind them on a horse and trying to lasso the drone. But you have all of this stuff kind of thrown together into one area. And I think that's why they use the word rodeo. Last year's event, or just a few months ago, I should say, 2017 event, they had drones that were crop dusting. They, of course, had the Aerial Sports League out there. They had demonstrations of virtual reality going on. Epson was there with their new glasses. I mean, you have this mix of all of this stuff going on, and at any given time, you can just look across the landscape and see drones flying and doing different tasks. So I think that's why they call it the drone rodeo.
I interviewed Mark Kornblatt of the Aerial Sports League early on in my podcasting, and I thought they had a great, fun concept. What were your impressions?
First of all, it was very, very windy that day, and I was really surprised to see that they were even running in that kind of wind. The craft that they race with are generally light, so when you're dealing with 30-mile-an-hour winds, that can really put a damper on that. But obviously it didn't, because they were out there racing and probably embracing the fact that this wasn't your typical race day out there, so I thought that was kind of fun. Mark is very, very excited about the Aerial Sports League and where it's going. And I tend to agree with him. I think it's an up-and-coming sport, not unlike maybe basketball in the 1880s, 1890, and in baseball in the 1900s. I mean, this could actually evolve into something along the lines of car racing, I think, in the future, where you're going to start seeing ESPN coverage of these events, if not already, and those types of things. And I think those purses are going to continue to get better and better. So I see the sport evolving. I see the sport getting a lot faster. It wouldn't surprise me in 3 or 5 years that we're talking 150-mile-an-hour craft running through there. Right? It's just amazing how fast that this technology is moving forward, and how these racers, and I kind of equate them to gamers. They're very, very passionate about this, and their whole lives live around it, just like gamers do. So I think it's just kind of an offshoot of the gaming segment of our population.
So do you fly drones yourself?
I do. I have a DJI Phantom that I get out quite a bit. Usually it's my grandson, though, 9 years old, that just absolutely loves this. He's been flying with me probably for 3 or 4 years already, much better at it than I am. So I find that interesting, and he's just not afraid of it, which I find interesting with children, too. It's just like how they adapt to computers, they adapt to this technology. My wife bought me that new Star Trek drone here not too long ago. Difficult to fly, though. It's the balance is off a little bit, but it's fun to see the Enterprise, kind of flying around in the sky. And I actually think that's one of the growth industries in the near future, is these specialized drones like the Millennium Falcon that Snoopy in his doghouse, flying around. I mean, I think those are going to be the areas where you're going to introduce more and more people to drones. But yeah, I get out and fly quite a bit. I was at an event over the last weekend up in Mandan, North Dakota, which is about 100 miles north of us here. And it was kind of a drone club up there, and we were working in conjunction with an autonomous tractor. And we had some sensors on the drone that had actually measured moisture in the soil. And then we were sending telemetry back to the autonomous tractor so that the tractor would know how close it could get to a pond or a slough, as we call them around here, and so it wouldn't get stuck in the mud, so to speak. So I found that very fascinating, and it actually worked. I actually thought that the autonomous tractor could have gotten a little bit closer, but that's okay. I mean, it was just a test to see if this actual technology could work.
Now, your hometown of Mandan is located near Bismarck, North Dakota, and about 200 miles west of Fargo. What's the drone culture like in the area where you live?
It's not very significant. I would guess that there's probably a couple dozen people that fly around here, so there's not a lot, but there are a few. When you get to the eastern part of the state, the industry is much more significant over there.
Have people in your area expressed any concerns about drones?
Well, you're starting to see them show up a little bit, at some of our events. We have some pretty large events in our community here, and I've noticed that there's been a few people that have put them up in the air around those. Whether it was legal or not is debatable, of course, but when you see them up in the air, people do make mention of that fact. So, and I think those scenarios I was talking about earlier about security and injury kind of pop up a little bit when they see them in the sky. But it's not a very common thing yet around
Many people recognize Fargo as a center for drone activity. Can you give us some insights into why that is?
So basically, this started probably about 10 years ago. So Senator Holden, who's a former governor of ours, who became a senator, I'm thinking about 12 years ago now, he had this kind of idea about other countries around the world were obviously also getting into drones, and scares a lot of people, of course, when you talk about warfare and drones. But he made a case to Congress about the fact that the United States has to lead in this technology because we certainly don't want to follow, going back to that war scenario again. So he was very prominent in having 6 test sites picked across the country. And one of them happened to be in North Dakota, which is Grand Forks. Now, Grand Forks already has an aeronautics school and has an air base just west of it as well, about 10 or 12 miles to the west of it. So it was a great combination going on there with UND and the air base. It culminated in what is called Grand Sky, which is an industrial park for drones. And that has been building over the last couple of years now. So then you have that. So Grand Forks is about 70 miles to the north of Fargo. And then Fargo has a great startup culture. So our current governor, Doug Burgum, is from Fargo and started Great Plains Software, which was then bought by Microsoft. I think it was in 2000. So you have that kind of going on. You have a Microsoft, in fact, it's the second largest Microsoft campus in the world right there in Fargo. So you have that going on, and then you have all this startup culture that's going on there. And Fargo's not that far removed from Grand Forks. So you have the availability for that testing that can go on and that type of thing. So I think what's happened is just kind of a combination of all that. These startup companies want that culture that Fargo offers, and the fact that they're really close to the testing facility just kind of combines to make this very, very unique opportunity for people who want to be in the drone industry.
Are the signs of a vibrant drone sector really apparent? I mean, if I were to come to Fargo, would I see drone companies or advertisements or logos or something that really pops out as this is a place for drones?
I don't know if it would be noticeable like with advertisement to the local community, but it is certainly apparent that the Fargo, and we call it the Red River Valley, actually. That would be Fargo, Grand Forks, and the river runs through both towns. So in the Red River Valley, it is pretty apparent. You can go out any nice day if you were to run up I-29, which is the interstate that runs between Grand Forks and Fargo. You would probably see craft in the air, and probably some very unique craft, whether it was a craft of surveilling agricultural land or testing for a particular thing. We even have approval now for out-of-sight testing here in North Dakota. So you can fly your drone for 20, 30, 40 miles if you are able to do that. So you have all those things that are going on, and so you have that opportunity. And of course, when you live in a rural area, people do get out and travel a little bit, kind of how things are around. You have to travel and get to things a lot. So you'll see these aircraft all the time when you're traveling through the area.
Have you attended any of the 1 million cups in Fargo?
I've been to many. In fact, I'm one of the people who brought 1 million cups to North Dakota. And that was our first ones were actually in the Bismarck Mandan area. Then Fargo came on board, Grand Forks, and now we have one in Williston as well. So it's amazing what's gone on with 1 million cups in Fargo. And that kind of goes back to that startup culture going on again. It is the most well-attended 1 million cups in the country right now.
Really? Where did the idea come from?
There was so Ellen Brannon, her married name now, was the lead over at the Idea Center here in Bismarck. And she was introduced to them, but she was unable to bring them in because of her position. She needed to have a couple of community people that are involved. And I was already kind of involved in the startup culture in North Dakota anyway. So she brought this idea to a gentleman by the name of Scott Wild and myself. So we basically just got going. We were kind of a test for them right away because Bismarck Mandan area is about 100,000 people. So it's a very, very small community for a 1 million cups. I think we were the 16th community at the time, and they were really targeting that 500,000 plus type of thing. And of course, the rest is kind of history. I mean, we actually have more people that show up in the smaller communities with 1 million cups than they do usually in the larger communities. And I think it's just because of that ruralness, that close-knitness that we have here. And then Fargo with Emergent Prairie came on board, I think it was 4 or 5 months later after they've seen some of the success that we were going on here. The difference is over there, they actually have an organization called Emergent Prairie that is funded as opposed to some volunteers, and they have staff and that type of thing. So they were actually able to take this to the whole next level. And they have an amazing facility. It's almost like going to a production show sometimes with the way they stage that over there, which brings a lot of excitement, of course. And they have great companies to pull from. You know, we're a community, like I said, of 100,000. You know, that Fargo area, I think, is at 350,000 now. So you just have more to pull from, and exciting companies. Bismarck Mandan is a government area. We're kind of boring because of that. Where Fargo, you know, you have all these emerging technologies all the time. So every week you go, you hear about something new and exciting, and it kind of gets your juices going again. So that's what they have going on there.
The reason I bring up 1 million cups is because it's my understanding that not all, but a number of drone startup companies either attended or were launched after attending a 1 million cups meeting. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think you're right on base there when you say that. I think technology in 1 million cups, even though it's not really designed for just technology, but it just seems that technology kind of gravitates to this. That doesn't mean that if you're, you know, somebody wanting to make strawberry jam and you have a company emerging because of that, that you can't go to 1 million cups too. But it seems to me that traditional type of businesses, the audience isn't as excited about hearing about them. They are excited about the technology. And so I think drone companies, you know, because it's exciting, we'll go there and talk about their story and get some excitement. You know, I know of a particular firm that after visiting with them for a couple of weeks, they attended 1 million cups and walked out of there with $500,000 in venture capital. So great things happen at 1 million cups for drone companies, and it's a great venue for people in that industry to share their ideas, share their stories, and start making their dream move forward.
By chance, was that company called Botlink?
It is.
Yeah, I interviewed Sean Mueller, the CEO of Botlink, about a year ago, and I remember him sharing that story.
So I'll give you the other side of that then if you're interested in knowing more.
Sure.
One of the companies I am associated with is Zoovio, and we digitize videotape and put them online. So it's like Netflix for your personal video library. You know, so like your wedding videos and that type of thing that you got laying around. Now you can stream them to your TV and that type of thing. So anyway, in 2012, North Dakota has this competition called Innovate ND, or at least at that time, 2012 was the last year they had this competition, and our company won that. So as a result, I tend to give back a little bit to that. So a couple of years ago, Innovate ND was having this competition, a smaller one, where they had $30,000 that they could give away. And I was one of 5 judges that were listening to, I think about 20 companies tell their story that day and compete for this. And they came up. And this was their very first presentation, I think. And Sean and Alex were up there, and they were almost fighting with each other during the demonstration. It was like, no, we're going to do it this way, Sean would say, and Alex would go, no, this is how it is, right? But they were talking about the time. To me, of course, being a techie type of person, was like, oh my goodness, this is going to change the world, you know. But we go back and decide who's going to get the money that day. The other 4 judges were like, are you kidding me? This is about presentation. It's not about changing the world. You know, we understood what these other companies were going to do. We're going to give them the money. We're not going to give Botlink anything. And I'm in there fighting for this. And anyway, they didn't get anything that day. But I had a conversation with them afterwards, and I was just like, you know, you got to continue to do this, because don't worry about what happened today here. You know, you got to get your story a little fine-tuned or whatever. So then about a year later, I was presenting. I am also the person who's moving the autonomous friendly corridor forward. It's an idea I had a few years ago, and I was talking about this at 1 million cups. And then Sean comes up to me afterwards, and he goes, I suppose maybe we should be doing this. And I was like, yes, you need to do this. So 2 weeks later, he does his presentation on the stage and then gets the $500,000 in venture capital. So I love telling that story. I think it's cool how you can, you know, go from basically one presentation where, even though it's amazing technology that nobody could understand it because of their presentation, getting $500,000 a year later because they fine-tuned that a little bit.
Now, you mentioned something about an autonomous friendly corridor. That sounds interesting. So what is that?
So about 2.5 years ago, I was part of a summit for the Central North American Trade Corridor, and I was leading the technology panel for that. And that's basically Highway 83. Highway 83 is the longest contiguous highway in North America. So it runs to Mexico City, runs right through the middle of the United States. Think Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then up into Canada. So I had suggested at the end of this that we should look at making Highway 83 an autonomous friendly corridor. The story basically goes that, our whole country was founded east to west, and it's very, very apparent in our part of the world. Our roads run east to west, our rail runs east to west. It's very, very difficult around here to go north and south. Where we're at to go to Rapid City, for example, if you were going to fly there, it's probably a couple hundred miles, but it takes like 360 miles to drive there because there's no direct path to what I would consider the next largest town to us, so kind of crazy. So we talked about this and the impact it has on our economy in the state, and especially with the oil industry or energy industry, a lot of synergy between North Dakota and Texas right now. So they use Highway 83 to move stuff all the time. And so anyway, that's what was brought up. And a local reporter was there, did a story on it, and then the next day it was all over the world, and we started getting flooded with phone calls here about the autonomous friendly corridor. So then we fast forward to now, and Highway 83 in North Dakota now is a testing corridor. So we have almost 300 miles of testing possibility for companies that want to come in and test their technology here. And you're going to see this at Drone Focus this year. It's the marriage of UGS, unmanned ground systems, to UAV at this conference. And you're going to see how these two technologies have synergies, how they can work together. And we really feel that that will be a major role in the future, especially in North Dakota, about moving this industry forward.
That does sound interesting. As a city planner, I'm fascinated at how big ideas like the autonomous friendly corridor actually become part of an implementation program. Now, picking up on Drone Focus, can you give us your perspectives of the event as it heads into its third year?
I think the first year they had 100 participants. Last year I think it was about 300. But it's very industry specific. You don't have a lot of people coming in who are not in the industry, key players in the industry. So the networking opportunities are amazing. Last year I know I talked to engineers from NASA and from the Pentagon. So these are the people that come to this event, right? This year, of course, because we're adding the autonomous vehicle mix to it, we're bringing in a lot of additional people, a lot of additional interest. In fact, the United States Department of Transportation Secretary Chow made her announcement yesterday that she'll be attending as well. So this is going to be a pretty big deal. And then part of the company that I'm part of called National Day Calandar, we're actually announcing National Autonomous Vehicle Day right in the morning on May 31st to start the conference off. So we'll have our congressional delegation, Secretary Chow will be part of that, and many, many other people in that industry. And they're coming as well because they want to learn about how you combine what's going on in the air with what's going on in the ground.
In your opinion, what has Drone Focus done, or what do you think it can do, to promote the economic sector in North Dakota as it relates to drones and technology?
They bring these other people in from other parts of the world. So the people who are here have that opportunity to visit with the Northrops and the Airbus and those type of things. And so I think it's just that networking experience that's really come on board because of Drone Focus. And I just expect that to continue.
You mentioned the National Calendar Day as a business that you created. What is that?
So about 4 years ago, we launched a website called National Day Calendar. It started because of my love for popcorn, and looking one day about National Popcorn Day, and knew it was on January 19th, but I couldn't find any information on how it got started. So just kind of had this idea about, and there were other days, of course, like that too. So just as kind of a personal hobby, started blogging about these national days, where they came from and all of that. Then before I know it, we started to have a little bit of following. We had some media that started to follow us, and they would start announcing these national days on a daily basis. And then, of course, social media kicked into that as well. And before you know it, here we are today. We're the number one trending item on social media, and we have one of the fastest growing websites in the world as far as traffic goes. So it's been a pretty amazing ride the last couple of years. Pretty much everybody in our office here just kind of shakes their head at it. We never really thought we'd become the keepers of national holidays, but that's where we have evolved to. And I will say that a couple of years ago, we really weren't sure if this was going to be a company or not. We had to decide. It was very, very disruptive during our day. I mean, we would get calls from media all the time. We deal with thousands of emails a day coming in. So we had to decide if this was going to be a hobby or a business. And most businesses would like to have millions of people following them already. We already have that in place, so we just decided that we would just make the switch and make this a full-time business. And we're growing it because of that now.
As an entrepreneur, what quality do you feel is most important to possess to succeed in growing a startup company like the National Day Calendar?
Well, I think persistence is key. You have to be passionate about what you do. And if you believe in what you do, you got to stay there for the long term. You just can't be there for 6 months or a year, and because you're not making it in that amount of time, that you walk away from it. Now, there are times, of course, that may make sense, but if you know that 3 or 4 or 5 years from now that your technology is going to change the world in some regard, that you need to stick it out. A great example of that is GoPro. Everybody thinks that they were just a startup company that hit it big a few years ago. In fact, they were around for 12 years before you or I ever even heard of their name. It just takes a while sometimes, and it takes a while for some of these newer technologies to catch on. So you just have to be there. You have to be persistent. You got to just kind of stick it out. And I think you can emerge on the other side, a very successful company if you do that.
And the day that we're recording this podcast, what is today's National Day?
Because my wife is the shrimp queen of the United States, I've been reminded many times that today is National Shrimp Day. We have a whole platter of shrimp right on our table out here to celebrate here pretty shortly.
Do you just record national holidays, or if somebody wanted to create a day, could they do that as well through your service?
When we first started, we were just researching and investigating how the days came to be. And we still do that, by the way. We're always looking. We've almost become a Wikipedia of data when it comes to that. People will send us news clippings from 1942 that their mom started this particular day or Congress did back then. So we're always still researching. But when we started to look at how we would monetize National Day so we could keep it around, we looked at that because a lot of people were asking us if they could register a new National Day with us. So we do go through that process now. We have anywhere from 18 to 20,000 applications a year that come into us right now, and we honor about 30 of those. And of those 30, if you're selected, there's a little bit of a fee that goes along with that, but you're forever on our National Day calendar then.
How do you sift through 18,000 applications to qualify such a small number?
Yeah, so, a lot of those are, almost immediately we can disqualify them because of maybe not family friendly. We get a lot of requests saying that, Jennifer changed my life and, I want to have a National Jennifer Day. And then by the time we get back to them, and then we don't honor individuals, but when we get back to them, they were like, well, it's okay, we broke up already. So a high percentage of those can get sifted through just through that process. And then of the ones that are a little more serious, they go in front of a committee of 4 people, and the 4 people have to vote unanimously on that National Day for it to become a National Day.
Marlo, is there anything about drones or technology that we should touch upon that we didn't talk about?
I actually think Amazon and Domino's and those type of companies, they're looking at how they're going to deliver goods over the next few years using drones, right? I actually think the industry is 180 degrees on itself. I actually believe in 10 to 20 years, it's going to be you and I that are going to own the drone, and our drones are going to go fetch our things for us. So they'll go get the pizza, they'll go get the bread and milk, and those type of things. So I know that everybody's wanting to advance this technology forward with delivery, but I just don't see Amazon having to deploy 1 million drones in the future to go to deliver us stuff when, in fact, it's going to be like you and I owning a car. We're all going to own drones that'll go get our stuff for us. So, when I talked to the founder of the drone rodeo, he had actually mentioned to me during the interview that, on the retail side, we're already starting to see saturation because all the hobbyists or whatever, all they're doing now is really upgrading their product or whatever. I have to disagree with them. I just think that there's going to come a time in the future where especially millennials and younger right now are going to look and say, I really don't need a car because my drone can go pick up all of this stuff. So, and I'll just use Uber or Lyft or other public transit systems to get around when I need to, but my drone will do all my errands for me. So that's where I think it's really going. And when we have buy into that idea, and then we have 200 million people in the country that will be after getting drones instead of the million or two that we have right now, because now they're being able to use them for practical purposes.
That's it for episode 102 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed listening to Marlo Anderson of the Tech Ranch and the National Day Calendar and gaining some perspectives from the Great Plains. I want to thank Marlo for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about the Tech Ranch, National Day Calendar, or the Autonomous Friendly Corridor, or just want to connect with Marlo, check out the website at thetechranch.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1 per month, you can help defray the cost of production. Thanks to those who have already done so. It has really helped. To donate, go to patreon.com/Drone Radio Show. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.